Okay. Got it. All right. And maybe there will be some others who will join us. Um, I'm happy if you all go ahead and unmute. Right now, there are so few of us on here that it's unless you have something weird going on in the background, um, I think we can go ahead and let everybody be unmuted as they like. Um, and I will go ahead and get started and give you a little bit about what we're doing here. Um, and I think because I'm I'm a teacher at heart, and teachers at heart these days need visual aids. And a visual aid is not a Zoom screen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll go ahead and get going here. Um, let's see if I can do this. I do this all the time. Why am I having a problem with it this morning, this afternoon? All right, here we go. So help me out here. Sometimes this works in one way or another. Which screen are you seeing? Are you seeing one picture or two?
We see
One.
your presentation.
Good, good. All right. Because sometimes, the screens get switched because I'm using a double screen here. So the workshop we're going to spend some time today talking about really is what the Creation Care team has been doing over the last year. And so we've put this presentation together. Go in peace to love and serve God's creation, caring for the earth, and mostly what all of this is a recap of the work that we've done and that folks around the diocese have done and are doing. And so I'll get more into that as we go along here. So before we go on, I'm interested in knowing what brought you here today. So let's find out, who's in the room, your name, your congregation, what's your interest or involvement in Creation Care work, and what do you hope for today? So I'm just going to. I could say we could do this thing by mutual invitation, but sometimes if you don't have a full screen in front of you, that's hard. So just jump in, and right now I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 folks. So just jump in, tell me who you are, and or tell everybody who you are, and congregation, why you're interested, and what would you like to get out of this next hour? Don't be shy.
Go
Go ahead.
This is called the Episcopalian politeness standoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will. I'm Rhoda Yeager, and I attend St. Barnabas in Cortez. Basically, I don't know anything about what has been going on as far as the Creation Care work goes, and so that's what I'm here for.
Okay, great. You'll get a good introduction to that, I hope.
I'll go next. I'm
Right,
Stuart Abbott. I'm senior warden at Trinity in Greeley. What is my interest? I'm a child of the 60s, and we had this drilled into us. And my hopes would be, how do I make my flock use the recycling bin? As simple as that.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I should say not make my flock, but help my flock
Okay, all
A
right.
bit.
I'm not sure we're going to get a really good answer to that because that happens all over the place. But we can take a stab at it, and that certainly fits in with some of the things that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, okay, I'll go. My name is Betsy Leonard, and I'm with All Saints Battlement Mesa, which is between Grand Junction and Glenwood Springs. And I'm interested and involved in creation work, partly because I am an environmental educator by training and by passion. And I'm also a lay pastoral leader, and the season of creation begins this Sunday. Fortunately, I'm not at the pulpit, but I am next Sunday. So I'd like to hear what the creation care team has been working on.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Craig.
I I have a very scientific mind, and I define science as the wondrous study of the God-created universe. And I know that that's very different than a lot of scientists. Often scientists are trying to disprove the existence of God. And I see science as the study of God's wondrous universe. And coming with that, stemming from all of that, is a sense of responsibility to be stewards of this creation. And I am a scout leader. So I teach my scouts how to be good stewards of what's around them. And, we talk about the outdoor code, all that. My house has a solar array, concepts of carbon footprint, all those things are not just things I talk about or think about, they are things I do. Yet I'm not a tie-dye wearing person, imagery of what a lot of people think. I'm very, very fiscal and scientific, but it's really a responsibility that we have to us and to our future to be responsible with God's creation.
Where are you?
I'm sorry, St. Timothy's Littleton.
Oh, okay, all right.
And in fact, one of the things we're going through right now is an evaluation of our building and looking at this question.
Okay, all right.
And I'm on Bell Street.
Okay, great. Michelle.
Hi, Gary. I'm Michelle Danson. I'm a non-traditional priest in the Episcopal Church. I'm based out of St. John's in Boulder, but I'm not on staff there. And most Sundays I do supply around the diocese. Plus, I'm a spiritual director, and I do a lot of retreats and workshops on the diocesan level. So personally, I'm interested in this for myself, for education and growth. And I'm also interested in it because I want to be aware of how I can support and encourage people, wherever and however I meet them, in what they're doing or attempting to do, or questioning about doing towards creation care. And Betsy, I'm sorry to tell you, but the season of creation started on September the 1st and finishes on October the 4th, which is St. Francis Day. However, next Sunday, you could happily preach about St. Francis and creation next Sunday and still be within the bounds of the season of creation care. So just so that you know, you're still in there. You're still in the time window. So yeah, and thank you for doing this, Gary. And yeah, I just like to be educated.
All right. Well, good. Thank you. And Diane, I don't know if you wanted to say anything or if you're just hanging out.
Oh, well, obviously we got to pick which ones that we were Zoom hosting, but yes, I would agree with everyone. We are working on our own being green in the office and how to continue to look at creation care as it, relates to God in our lives. So I'm very interested. Thanks, Gary.
Good. Okay. Well, what brought us here today? That would be the creation care team, of which I am the member here today. So it really goes back, at least in terms of the Episcopal Church in Colorado, shortly after Bishop Kim became our bishop, and she identified 4 areas, or she and the rest of the staff and leadership of the diocese identified 4 areas that she really wanted the church to pay attention to. And one of those 4 areas was creation care, recognizing that climate change, and actually when it was first proposed, it was all about climate change. And as we talked about it, we thought it was just a little bit bigger than climate change by itself. There was really more about creation care. So there was a task force begun right shortly after that. Tracy Methy in the bishop's office was given the charge of sort of pulling together a group of folks who were interested in overseeing this, of being the task force or the team that did that. And one of the things that happened shortly thereafter is we had a retreat, overnight retreat at Cathedral Ridge on creation care, and we brought in a speaker, Margaret Bullitt Jones from the East Coast, Massachusetts, I think, to lead us in a retreat. We had 15 or 20 people there. Some of those stayed on and worked on the task force, and there are some other things that we can talk about in terms of some of the stuff that we have done with that. Then what really brought us here today is that the Creation Care Task Force brought a resolution to convention, diocesan convention last year. First resolution that had been put up at convention in quite some time. And we were happy to be able to do that. And I had the privilege, honor, whatever, I drew the short straw. I was the one that sort of presented that resolution at the convention, and it passed unanimously. So it was well received. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to find out what the church was doing, the church in Colorado was doing, and learn how we could support that, and to encourage folks in their both their congregational and personal living to tend to the creation as we could. And so to really do that well, we had to find out where the congregation, the church is. And so we sent out a survey in the first part of this year to church, basically anybody who wanted to take it. It went to congregational leaders, but again, it was made available to kind of anybody who wanted to take it. And there were several people who would reply from each church. Sometimes it was just one. Sometimes it was the priest or priest in charge or deacon. Sometimes it was a lay leader. Sometimes it was just the person in the congregation who had the most passion about congregational work in creation care. We did a Lenten book study on Hope Matters, which was a book about, we've got to do this, and the fact that there is hope. It's not all negative news out there. The summary was, we took all the survey material, and there were a couple of people on the team, not me, but a couple of people on the team who took all of the material and massaged it every which way but loose, and really did a great job of digging down and analyzing what came out of the congregation. And then, that's where we're going to spend most of our time today. And then we just had a creation care retreat in August, again at Cathedral Ridge. And we had folks at that retreat, they were mostly from the Front Range. but it was open to anybody, and it was a great time where we talked about hopes and resources and all of that. And so that's where we are now, where the Creation Care team is now. There are 6 or 7 of us on there. There are me, Tracy, Suzanne Sattler, who's at the cathedral, Deacon Linda Brown, retired priest, Becky Brown, Sue Carter, who's up in Fort Collins, and then we had another person drop off, and then another new person just sort of joined. So it's been a very good team to work with, bring a lot of passion. And we also do, as many of you may know, we send out a monthly newsletter. And if you don't get that, let me know, and we'll make sure that you get on there. Next one's coming out, I think, next week. So that's what brought the team here, is all of this work on Creation Care, our conversations. We've led workshops online on Zoom and all sorts of other stuff. So, but what we're really going to talk about today is the results of the Care of Creation survey. And if you don't have this, I would encourage you to download it. It's available on the diocesan website, and you can download it. It's, how many pages is it? I don't know. It's got my copy here. It's about 30 pages, I think, with pictures and graphs and charts. So that's what we're really going to talk about. And so what the survey told us, excuse me, I need to move something on my screen so that I can see the bottom of this. There we go. We asked churches and institutions to describe the work they're doing around Creation Care in 6 areas. How do you green your church or your institution? We talked a lot about, we talked about church or community gardening, because we learned that there were folks who were engaged in that. Are folks engaged in eco-justice work? What is going on in terms of worship and prayer? What are folks doing to protect the natural environment? And then what kinds of education and study are people doing around Creation Care themes? And so what we learned is that 42 of the churches in Colorado, at least that responded, are currently involved in Creation Care ministry or intend to begin this work. One of the funny things that we learned is that we had one congregation where 2 people responded, and one said, "We aren't doing anything." And somebody else said, "Oh yeah, we're doing a lot." So there's, even internally, sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about what's going on. What we learned is the churches are primarily active in recycling, improving energy efficiency, and conserving water use on their grounds. And that seems, I think, probably is true for us at home, right? Because that's the thing, and I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit, but those are things where you can pretty much easily make a difference quickly and feel good about what you're doing. And so whether it's, swapping out LEDs, incandescent bulbs and putting in LEDs, or some churches have been engaging in, putting in solar panels, those kinds of things. Are we doing better use of water on our grounds, or we're xeriscaping or things like that? But what we really found was that worship is the next most frequent expression of Creation Care ministry. And this goes back, Betsy, to your question about season of creation, but also, almost, I won't say every church, but I would say a vast majority of churches at least do something on St. Francis Day, the blessing of the animals or something like that. And so that raises up those issues of Creation Care in terms of the most vulnerable of these little animals that we see, what we come in contact with. I'll say just a word before we move on about the season of creation. Yeah, thank you, Michelle, for raising the date issue. Yeah, it's September 1st to St. Francis Day, and that's the year. It was proposed by Patriarch Bartholomew, the ecumenical patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church. And why does it start on September 1st? In the Orthodox tradition, September 1st is New Year's Day. The liturgical year for the Orthodox begins on September 1st, not on the first Sunday of Advent, but September 1st. And so it was the Sundays between September 1st and St. Francis Day was what he proposed. And this was proposed a couple decades ago. And since he proposed it, a lot of denominations have sort of signed on, the Anglican Church being one of those. And we've had representation from the Episcopal Church as part of the planning team. So we're coming up on the end of that this coming Wednesday with St. Francis Day. But my congregation, we observed it all this year for the first time. What it meant for us was primarily we used a lot of the resources that have been made available. We didn't change our lectionary. There are options for changing lectionary, but we did use different prayers of the people. We did use a different blessing. We did use a different post-communion prayer. We used some different confessions and litanies. So there are ways of doing this without changing a whole lot of your regular worship. And those resources have been made available to us. So, but the other thing that we learned beyond what we're doing around the diocese is that we found it hard. And some of this, I think probably you can raise your hand. I'm not asking you to, but you can raise your hand about how this is in your own congregations. Sometimes there's only one or two people in a congregation who have interest or energy, and they feel like they're batting their heads against a wall because nobody else is signing on or nobody else is signing up. Given all of the things that are going on in congregations, there's a limited amount of time. How do we fit this in with everything else that we're doing? And that may have to do as well with our church isn't very large. And so the number of folks who really have, who can be invested, they're already invested in something else and they don't have the time to add yet one more thing on. How do we get started? That one comes up a lot. Where do we start? Is there somebody who's willing to take the leadership role? Congregations can't expect their clergy to add this to all of the other things that they have to do. Is there money? Oh my goodness, it's going to cost money to put in LEDs. We don't have the upfront costs covered. All of those kinds of things. Our buildings were built many times, in many cases, way before questions of economics, of environmental economics were taken into consideration. And I'll just give one example from my congregation. I'm at Good Shepherd in Centennial. This building was designed in the late 70s and built in the early 80s. It has no windows that can open in the sanctuary. So we are dependent upon artificial heating and air conditioning. And now just go back 2 years and what was everybody telling you to do? Open your windows so you get fresh air moving in and out of your space to help limit the spread of COVID, right? We didn't have that. We couldn't even open doors because we only have one door in our sanctuary that leads to the outside. Every other door leads to another space inside. So when we're not, our building challenges us, and that's the case for a lot of people. Double paned windows. If we've got older buildings, they don't have that. So there are these challenges, and then how aware are the folks in the congregation of all of the issues surrounding? So it's hard work. and we recognize that. And you may be facing some of those barriers in your own congregation. But there are people who are interested and want to do things, people like you. And so that's what we want to talk about, is what is working and what can we do moving forward. And so I want to stop and give you a chance for any questions or comments at this point before we get into kind of the meat of what we'll be doing for the next 45 minutes or so. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. All right, we've had 2 new people join, and that's great. So we'll move on. So how does Christian community empower us to care for our earthly home and all that it is as an expression of love for neighbor or self? So what we took from the survey is that, you know, the visible actions we take as a community matter, and there are 2 ways in which every member of a congregation can participate. One is in worship. So we recognize that prayer and worship form the basis for our relationship to God and to the world God has created. And 87% of our churches responded saying they are either engaged in worship around issues of creation or they plan to be. And some of those were, you know, they just knew that season for creation was coming up. They hadn't done anything and they were going to start doing it. So 87, that's a goodly proportion of our responding churches are doing something. And it may be sort of self-selective in the sense that the churches who are doing this responded. The churches that aren't doing this didn't respond to the survey, rather than sort of have that out there that they weren't doing that. And then another way that we do this is through the greening of our buildings and grounds. Working to care for the land and the buildings is another way that we offer a witness. So is that changing our exterior lighting? Is that xeriscaping? All of these ways that is it changing interior lighting? So 94% of our congregations are doing that or plan to do that. And how are they doing that? Comes in different shapes and sizes in terms of worship. From Sunday celebrations of the season of creation, blessing of the animals around St. Francis Day, online Earth Day morning prayer. The team did some worship online during COVID. We offered some online options for worship, and that's, you know, still obviously possible. Christ Church Castle Rock does what they call holy hikes, where I think once a month they hike to a place and offer Eucharist, celebrate the Eucharist. Good Shepherd, we do something similar. We call it Altars in the World. And we don't always do Eucharist. Sometimes we'll do morning or prayer. We've done Compline. We've hiked up to a high place and watched the sunset and said Compline as the sun has set. We've tried to have people who are knowledgeable about the place where we've hiked. So it might be a geologist or geographer or a botanist join us and talk about the places that we've gone. Our retreat at Cathedral Ridge did a rogation procession. There are wonderful resources for doing rogation processions. Rogation used to be associated with the blessing of the crops, but now it's really a blessing of work and work around agriculture as well as creation care. So these things vary. And I don't know, are any of you doing anything in the congregation you're a part of that would be in addition to or different from these things? Don't be afraid to speak up. No? Okay. How do we use our buildings? You can make them energy efficient. You can do it, like I said, by changing your outdoor lighting to make sure that your outdoor lighting, that can be energy efficient as well. But then a lot of places, Creation Care and outdoor lighting can get the lights directed down as opposed to being directed all over the place, which messes with migratory bird migrations, is they can't see well because there's all of this excess lighting. So you can direct the lighting down. But can you use the gardens? St. Andrews and Manitou Springs, makes it very nice for people who, they identify this consciously as using their gardens for people who pass by. And if you've got a space that can do that, or you can see the photo down there in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a meditation or a place to sit and enjoy creation, the gardening. So how do you do this? Different churches are doing it in different ways, both energy but also in sharing the creation. So worship and using your buildings in creative ways. Any thoughts or questions on any of that? No? All right. How are we changed by disciplines of prayer, worship, and study and intentional daily living to connect with what God has created? The congregation, members of our congregations have chosen to do this in a couple of ways. Study. Using one of those legs of Anglican theology, you do a book study, or have a faith forum or adult forum, dean's forum, whatever you want to call it, on something like Creation Care, different ways that you could do it, whether it's a workshop on recycling, to get someone in who can talk to you about what are all of these different things that we can recycle and what can't be recycled. To do that kind of a workshop and say, this is important. I worked at DU for a long time, and the sustainability folks would go to hockey games and they would stand behind the trash recycling bins at hockey games, so that when people would be coming out on their way home, going home, and they would want to throw something away, they would go up and they would show it to the person who was standing, and the person would say, well, that is this kind of stuff. It can go in this kind of bin, whether it's glass, plastic, paper. Oh, well, this paper can't be recycled because it's got all this grease on it. That has to go in trash. That's something that you could do at an adult, or the kids will know this better than most of the adults, to have them do that. How do we study? How do we do that sort of thing? And gardening, of course, going back to working the Garden of Eden. 44% of the churches are engaged or planned to be engaged in sort of community gardening. And this is distinct from just tending to your physical plant. This is more intentional than that. So study options. You can see a lot of books. There are so many books out there that you could do a discussion. If you've never read Sand County Almanac, wow, what a powerful book that is. But we've got a lot of resources that we could hand on to you. There's a wonderful film, and we saw it at the retreat that we had in August, called The Letter. And it's all about the Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si. And it talks about him, why he's passionate about it, but it also brings in folks from around the globe, not just Catholics, who are feeling the impact of climate change. It's really quite moving and quite positive. And it was made actually through YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and you can find it and watch it for free and stream it for free. We're going to show it at Good Shepherd on Wednesday the Feast of St. Francis, figuring that that was a good ending to the season of creation, would be just to watch this film and to have a conversation about it. It's about an hour and a little over an hour and a half long, but you can get it for free and stream it. You can see St. Aidan's Boulder has beehives, and they produce honey. And Little Shepherd of the Hills uses a greenhouse to extend their growing season. Patrick's Pagosa Springs indoor community garden. What can you do to do these kinds of things given space that you might have? Unused space in your property, unused space in your building. Can you have an indoor community garden, or to have an indoor what do you call them? Farmers market. And the church in Broomfield has a very, very popular farmers market. So here are ways that we expand or extend our reach. Any of you doing anything like that? Or any questions or comments? Yeah, make sure you're unmuted if you have a comment so I can. No? We'll come back for general discussion, so you may think of something. And then how do we as followers of Jesus carry out this work to strive for justice and peace for all people and for all of God's creation? We have to bear witness. So we do this in a number of ways. We protect the environment, or we work for eco-justice. So it may be a church project, or we do things individually or corporately. So we learned from the survey that some people do things, they'll undertake a greening project, whether it's a cleanup or a planting, working with other organizations that have projects out, river cleanups or things like that. Eco-justice, this comes up a lot in the film, the letter. What happens when communities feel the impact of rising water and things crumble? What's going on with all of that? And so churches are responding in that, paying attention to it, doing some education around that, or they plan to address this. There was a movement in the 2015, is that right? General Convention to add another vow to the baptismal vows that strive for justice and peace, but there's also to protect creation, to recognize and honor creation. That was tabled in 2018, and it didn't get brought back up at the last General Convention. I think we should bring it back up. It's just sitting there on the table. But we've been involved in other issues like responding to COVID and coming out of that. So there are things that we can do as congregations or individuals. So trail cleanup. St. Michael's, Colorado Springs, goes out and does trail cleanup. Here's Holy Comforters Broomfield Farmers Market. There are donations that can go to folks to help make fresh produce available to those with less access. Places where there's food, where there are food deserts. How can we respond to those kinds of things? Nativity Grand Junction, Spay Neuter Clinic on the Navajo Reservation. Again, taking advantage of this kind of working with our those who have problems with access to resources, and we can work with that.
Costs.
Pardon?
Costs that go along with it is a big problem. It's not just access.
Right. So there are a lot of different things that we can do to help with this whole issue of creation care, and I hope you've gotten some idea that this extends a lot further, kind of wherever your imagination will take you. That questions of our pets are part of creation care, as are questions of recycling or energy efficiency or eco-justice. That's sort of wherever you want to take it. And there are resources in all those areas. So that's what we learned from the survey. And what we're going to do now is continue to work on these things, make more resources available based on what we've learned, be able to take that to congregations who said, what can we do? We don't even know where to start. Now we know what other congregations have done. We can put folks in conversation with some of the folks who've been at this longer, folks who've said, well, this is how we started talking about energy efficiency. This is what we were able to do in terms of recycling. This is what we've been able to do in terms of community gardening. We had at Good Shepherd, we had a scout recently who wanted to do an eagle project. And we thought about community gardening. And then we started to look around and we realized that the place that would be natural for a community garden on our property, there wasn't any way to get water there for irrigation. So we learn from one another about what we need and what we can do. But that was the primary impetus behind the survey. We went to the convention and said, we want to learn this. We want to encourage the churches in the Episcopal Church of Colorado to engage in creation care. And the convention said, yes, this is good. But what we needed to do was get sort of a ground zero so that we knew where to build from. And that was what the survey was all about. And this is what we've learned, is that there's a lot of work that is going on. There's a lot of work that people want to do, but they need to have resources to do it. And so now we know what we can build upon, both with those churches who are doing a lot of work, but also with those churches who want to start. And so my question now, and my question to all of you, and I'm going to take the slide off because this is actually the last one. We've gathered, and so now we are sent, those of you who are at this workshop, but all those who will see this maybe later. And what will you take from here? So I'm anxious to hear what comments, questions, suggestions you have. I want to give Becky Brown, retired priest, the credit for pulling all these slides together. She was one of the folks who really did that deep dive into the data. And as I said, I'm Gary Brower. I'm the rector at Good Shepherd in Centennial, and have been part of this.
You're still sharing your screen.
Yeah, I'm going to stop right now. There we go, as I said.
So our church is in a very interesting place because we are undergoing what we call a season of discernment. So we are digging hard and deep into who are we as a church? What are we doing going forward? And everything you talked about today is on the table, so to speak, for our church. We're looking at really big questions like, what is ministry? What is church? Is church anything to do with a building with a pretty steeple, or is it about going out into the community? Community gardens, how do we feed people? How do we, all those big questions. So I would say that all of this is going to get taken back to that discussion at our church.
I would highly suggest if you haven't gotten a copy of the survey data, it would be really helpful, I think, in your conversations.
Where can I get that? I'm sorry.
It is. I will find it and see it. I can't. I don't want to look for the the URL right now because I got to sort of have this conversation.
Yeah, Gary, Diane can probably look for that while you're talking. I'm sure she can do that.
I will certainly look for it right now.
Okay, thanks. But I would suggest that. And then in terms of worship and those kinds of things, there is available at the National Church site. If you go to the National Church and look under resources for creation care, you'll find all of the resources that the National Church has put together for worship and things like that, which is where you can find really good information on the Rogation procession. And there will be links there also to the Season of Creation's website. If you just type in Season of Creation, you'll thank you, Craig. You'll find all sorts of really good stuff. Some of it is worship oriented, but some of it is really much more or Season of Creation oriented. Some of it you can use kind of at any time. But when you're trying to talk about what's ministry and those kinds of things, and where does creation fit in, that's a vital part, I think, of that question. And different people are going to bring different passion to that. So, thank you. Other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about natural burials.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, the footprint for a regular burial in a casket and being embalmed and being put in a vault. I don't know the numbers, but it's huge. And the possibility of the body being decomposed and going back to the earth is practically zero. And even regular flame creation has a big footprint. So Colorado is a place where we can have natural burials without caskets, without vaults, without embalming. And so my husband and I have made plans to do that. And we've got plots in Evergreen Cemetery, which allows natural burials. Another thing that Colorado allows, and I was at the retreat, in fact, I was at the beginning retreat in January 2020, and also the one in August with Gary. And the person I was in a small group with, just me and her, her husband had died the previous year, and instead of flame cremation, he'd been water cremation. And what happens when that happens is you get this vast amount of compost, and she had a little sample of it that is then you can use anywhere on plants or anything, rather than ashes that get thrown into water and pollute the water or go on the ground or something. And she told me that she and her daughter celebrate his Earth Day, the day that he became Earth. And she said that on that day, they go to places that he particularly liked. So I just want to make that people aware of that when we need to think what's going to happen to ourselves when we die. And there are ways that we can be thoughtful about the earth in that process. And Colorado is very supportive of it. We're fortunate we live in that state.
I know not all of you are convenient to this local in terms of where you are, but there's a place, it's relatively new, down by Chatfield State Park in the southern part of the metro area. It's called Seven Stones. And they do all of that and provide natural burial. And I mean, they don't do all of it on site, but they will refer folks to all of these places. And I'm bringing a representative from Seven Stones to do an adult forum for my people on all of those different options. And some places will do natural burial. Some places won't, and they're sort of scattered around. But in Crestone, go figure, they will also do sort of a funeral pyre. I think it's the only place in Colorado where you can do a funeral pyre if you want to do something of that nature. So yeah, there are a lot of options out there demanding different levels of resources to do the burial itself, but also taking up different amounts of space. And so they're out there. But Seven Stones has really good materials on all of that. So Other thoughts or questions? I did put in the chat the link to the Diocesan Our Creation Care webpage. And there are a lot of resources there for green burial. There was a presentation that we did on soil and questions about gardening. There was a lot, and we did a workshop here at Good Shepherd on recycling and talked about that. So there's a lot. We've talked as a task force about electric vehicles, pros and cons of those. Because yeah, it sounds like it saves a lot of stuff, but there are some other issues involved in heavy metals and all of that. So how do you weigh all of those things? There's a lot out there. And again, there are a lot of books that one could do book studies on. So other questions, suggestions? Is there something that you would like the task force to spend some time doing, perhaps on preparing resources for the congregation?
You're messing me up. I know, it's okay. I'm not bad.
We have a happy little person.
So I do have a link to the survey results
Thank you.
that Mike sent to me. You have to really search for it. Let me look at the link again. Yeah, unfortunately, it's just an email.
If you just copy the address bar
Yep.
and then paste it into chat.
All right, I will do that right now. There you go. It is on our website.
Thank you.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, thanks for putting that up, Diane. We need to have that linked from the Creation Care Task Force site, and I'm surprised that it's not there. I looked for it there too, and I had to dig around and find it elsewhere. So
Well, as soon as Tracy gets back, I will certainly ask her.
I was going to bring up, you mentioned batteries, and I'm not talking about big batteries or rechargeable ones, but even regular batteries. Every time, some of mine have gone bad, it's, well, what do I do with it now?
Yeah.
I don't have a clue whether it's okay to dump it in the trash. Then the other issue that reminded me of is all of these medications that we have that have expired. Yeah, there are places around that will take them, but not a whole lot. What do you do with them? Is that part of caring for your, yeah.
There's a website, and I'm trying to find it right now, where you can go and yeah, I can't put my finger on it right now. Where it will tell you where you can recycle certain things, and it's batteries are really hard now. I know that that the store Batteries and More usually will take them, but some of these things they might charge you by the pound or something like that. I know it's really hard. The last time I went out to try and find, it used to be, Best Buy would take a lot of this stuff. And they don't. Sometimes Walmart or Target will take some of these things. They'll have recycling bins inside. So I don't know if that's store by store or if that's,
yeah.
But yeah, there was I wish I could put my finger on that because it was one of those places where I could go and I could say, all right, I want to get rid of electronics. Where do I go?
That too, yeah.
You know, and it had all of these sites. So let me see if. No, I'm not finding it. Some of that stuff if you just Google, you'll find it. you'll get
Okay.
answers.
Yeah.
But that's a good question.
But it's also something our congregations ought to be discussing or considering. I mean, how many people just go and throw the batteries in the garbage, or,
Yeah.
or they're
yeah.
tempted to just throw out their electronics. And so, yeah.
Exactly.
Does an old rechargeable phone count as something you shouldn't just trash? Yeah,
So phones can be taken to Best Buy.
we don't have any Best Buys down here, so
Where is down here?
Cortez,
Okay.
Four Corners area, yeah. So
There is
it's just, it's one of those.
Yeah, it's one of those challenges, like of similar to being in a food desert, a recycling desert. Where do you get rid of stuff and things like that? I know in my house I've still got a lot of fluoro tubes, and they're hard to get rid of.
Those
You know.
two, yeah.
Given how much
Yeah,
it costs.
We go from one thing to the other, and sometimes I don't mind paying for recycling. It's just finding a place that actually does it.
Right.
Earlier you'd referred to a newsletter and maybe a list of resources. How does that get got?
Okay, so I saw, let's see, okay, Betsy said that she wanted to receive her newsletter, and she put her email in, she sent it to me, email in the chat. So if you want to do that, I can get that added to
Need you to be quiet.
here is a link going into chat for an organization called Secure the Call that uses old phones for battered women.
Hmm.
And it has information on how to donate, get print labels and things like that.
Yeah, and Diane, thank you, Diane, put up our website, and can you scroll down a ways?
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to let people know how I got here.
Okay.
So I went to Congregational Resources. Quiet, sweetie. At the top, and here are Living Out Our Baptismal Covenant. These are the 4 initiatives that Bishop Kim wants to work with. And here's climate change. So that's exactly where I ended up. Hold on one second. And it has a lot of great information for sure. And if you click here are some resources. I kind of thought that's where this report would be.
Yeah, that's where I would have thought it would have been too.
Right. Here's the Green Burial Council Cemeteries by State, like Michelle Danson brought up. Yep. Here's some about gardening here. Here's the film Understory. Caring for creation with a green Advent and Christmas. Here's resources here. Reconsider recycling. Then here's events. Are we called to creation care? So this webpage really does have a lot of information. I will definitely find out how to get that report on here. Not how, but we could.
Yeah.
And here's how to create a green team at your church, which I know that's what you were sort of talking about, Stuart, in terms of your church.
Aha.
Yeah. And
They'll stand by the bin and direct what goes in.
Yeah.
And Diane and Gary, if I can share my screen, I found the resource that for Care for Creation that has Season of Creation Care, thank you, which is a beautiful document
Really great stuff.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really rich. It's long. It's like 40 pages, but it has a lot. It has lots of prayers. It actually has a lot of quotes. And you can see the bishops that have signed this, one of which is Kim Lucas, Diocese of Colorado. And it has, once you get down into like page, I've forgotten, let me just get down here, I guess. I don't know. It has lots of quotes from different people, whether they're theologians or whether they're people, authors, different places, you know, like one paragraph quotes that it's a beautiful document. And it has alternative collect. So like tomorrow I'm going to use the collect from here, not the collect that's in our lectionary. So just, you know, it's worth looking. Anyway, I've put that link in there for everybody and you can all have it. And yeah, it's good. I highly recommend it.
And here's the
Okay.
link to, wrong one. That's the wrong link. We already did that. This is what I wanted. So this is the link to Seven Stones, and you can see what they do. And you'll see when you go there, you'll see that there are burial options and pre-planning and all that kind of stuff. But green burial is right there on there. And there are several places around Colorado where green burial is approved. So very, very interesting conversation, certainly. And the book by Mallory McDuff on Our Last Best Act is really good as well. So, any other questions or thoughts, suggestions, comments? Well, if not, then
Can I just
Wait,
make a comment,
Sue,
Gary?
Stuart, I think he was trying to talk as well. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah,
Stuart was trying-
Diane, I think it's great you've got your grandson there because this is why we're doing this, is for the future. And I mean, what a God thing that he's there and he's babbling away. Hi, darling. But it's real. It's not just saving a bit of money or, you know, it's his future that we're all working together for. So.
Indeed. Well, go forth and be green. Let the team, let us know how we can help. And we'll be happy to do whatever we can. Again, we've got a lot of resources available to us and try and make those as available to everybody else as we can, as quickly as we can. So thank you all. If you're going to Grand Junction for the convention, I'll look forward to seeing you there next weekend. You'll find me. I'll be at the Creation Fair table.
Would you be willing to share your email address, Gary?
Sure. I'll put it in the chat right now, if I can see. There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can always
Well,
ask me too. I can tell you Gary's email.
All right, everybody take care. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane, for your help with this. And we'll see you all
Sure
All
thing.
right.
in agreement.
Thank you all for being here, and the recording, as I said earlier, will be available on the convention website. If you want to share this with other people, I'm so glad you wanted resources. And if we can provide more for you, just let us know.
Yeah. And Gary, I'd like to thank you for all this work you've done because you've done a lot of work behind the scenes that a lot of us don't know about. So thank you for doing all that consistently over a long period of time. So thank you.
I will extend that to the team. I'm just one. Who gets to be the face for some of this stuff.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Hope to see you next week.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.